Queen's Park Rangers drew 0-0 with 10-man Sunderland at Loftus Road on Saturday following Jobe Bellingham's 58th minute red card, making it 3 draws in a row for the R's and a second consecutive clean sheet. It's a result that has halted a 3-match winning streak for the league leaders, and for the very first league game this season, the Black Cats were unable to find the back of the net. Rangers themselves were unable to make the most of their additional man, but this was undoubtedly our best overall performance of the season so far for me. So as usual, I'm going to break this one down and look at what worked and what didn't. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and let's get straight into it. QPR squad have been dropping like flies over the past couple of weeks, with Karamoko, Dembele and Morgan Fox both confirmed to be out ahead of Saturday. And so I wasn't entirely surprised that Jake Clark-Salter was absent once again when the team sheet dropped at 2 o'clock. That's now 6 out of 13 matches that Jake has missed this season, nearly half, having played 33 out of 46 in the league last season, which is very typical, having just tied him down on a long-term contract last month. That meant 2 changes to the side that took a point away at Burnley last weekend, with Nicholas Madsen returning from exile and Kieran Morgan coming in for a first start, which meant 2 things. Sam Field was dropped back into centre-back, just like we saw against Palace in the Cup, and we were playing 4-3-3, which if you're a regular viewer of the channel, you'll know is a formation I've been desperate to see Cifuentes return to. And as I said at the start of the video, it's a formation change that led to what I personally think was our best display of the season so far, mainly because this midfield three of Varane, Madsen and Morgan finally solves some of our problems of being incapable of dominating teams or playing through the centre of the pitch. The opening 10 minutes of the match I found pretty fascinating for a few reasons. Firstly, I thought our pressing, which has been really poor all season, was much more akin to the chaos pressing we were used to in the second half of last season. It pressured Sunderland into making mistakes, and it enabled us to win the ball higher up the pitch. And on the flip side to that, Sunderland didn't seem to be pressuring us quite as much as other teams have at Loftus Road this season. Now don't get me wrong, I thought they were brilliantly regimented, incredibly sharp in their passing at times, and they looked really dangerous in attack, particularly on the counter. But I feel like when we were in possession, they stood off us a bit more than others. And I think that gave us a bit of confidence in the early minutes to start working the ball much more crisply than we've seen in previous home matches. That was evident with our first chance of the game on 6 minutes, with a physically strong Varane beating Mundle to the ball and initiating a triangle of first-time passes with Madsen and Morgan that set Smith free in behind to pass to Seller at the near post, but he couldn't turn in time and drove the ball off target to the right. It was a lovely move that was only really missing a striker's finish. Just as we've seen with other opposition at home though, Sunderland's method was to push us wide, and they'd done their homework to double up on Ashby down our left. The beauty of this Sunderland team though is they never seem to over-engineer things, with Roberts deciding to chip the ball inwards to Hume on 14 minutes, who set Isidore free between our centre-backs, but he blasted wide of the left-hand post. There were a few familiar gripes from previous home games too, but thankfully these were fleeting. On occasion we still tried to play it out the back, leading to a few mistakes that thankfully went unpunished, but we're mixing it up much more now with long goal kicks, which we could profit from more often with an extra man in midfield. And to be fair, even when we did try to build from the back, we were much sharper in doing so, with Ashby playing some lovely passes into the midfield, which made it a real shame when he went off injured on 44 minutes for Santos, because I thought he was having his best game so far. My other bugbear of having every man back for corners was still present in that first half, and on 19 minutes it led to Sunderland's best chance of the game when the ball was played deep into our box to Hume, who headed the ball out to Dan Neil on the edge of the box, and his awkward half volley looped over the massive players in the box and rattled the left post, with Nardi completely unaware of it. If that one had gone in, I don't think we could say anymore that we've been unlucky with conceding worldies. Thankfully though, again, it's something we seem to learn from in this game, eventually putting players out onto the edge of the box and reshuffling our arrangement to reduce those chances. I still think having a player on the halfway line though would help reduce that completely. Further Sunderland chances would come, with Isidore's header on 25 minutes caught by Nardi and Hume's right-footed shot on 31 minutes missing to the right, but Rangers defended well to keep things level. Here I have to shout out Sam Field, because he looks absolutely natural at centre-back once again next to Cook, and he didn't put a foot wrong the entire game. This position suits his playing style so much that I genuinely wonder if we should just keep him there from now onwards, particularly now we found a midfield three that works so well. That midfield three led us to having the rest of the chances in the first half. Varane was the defensive hustler, winning loose balls in the centre of the pitch and shrugging off the opposition to set us off on the attack. Morgan complemented him excellently with a youthful energy that saw him popping up all over the pitch, including a fantastic piece of defending when Sunderland threatened to break on the counter, which he topped off with a lovely pass back into the middle when he was under pressure. Madsen meanwhile was playing like he had a point to prove, having been totally unused in the last 2 games, at times spraying pinpoint long balls out to Chair, or lovely first time passes in tight spaces to free up Smith or Varane. For me, there is absolutely a player in there with Maddison. The trouble is, we just don't have that centre forward right now. Our closest chance in the first half came from Steve Cook and Jimmy Dunn headers, but both went to the keeper's palms. I thought Salah showed a couple of tiny glimpses of promise, most notably with a great effort in the second half, which we'll come on to, but you couldn't help but feel if we had Frey on the pitch, we could have turned this promising display into a lead. My big question at half-time was whether we could string that good first half together with a second, because that's something that we've totally not achieved this season. And the answer to that question is a little bit more complicated, because although our effort remained the same, the context of the game considerably changed on 58 minutes. The second half started similarly end to end, with Patrick Roberts threatening from range just 3 minutes in, and Cher's free kick effort sailing over the crossbar on 55 minutes. But 3 minutes later, the match changed completely when Jobe Bellingham won the ball in the centre of the pitch from Nardi's goal kick, tried to guide it through a web of QPR players, but found the ball escape him and crunched Sellers' ankle in the process trying to recover it. This is of course totally ironic given Jack Colback got sent off for an almost identical challenge on Jobe Bellingham in almost exactly the same area of the pitch in the same fixture 13 months ago. Bellingham knew it was a red straight away, and fair play to him because he stayed around to make sure that Salah was okay. The weirdest thing is though, and I know most of us will have been thinking it, is that I was immediately unsure whether this was going to be an advantage for us. We couldn't break down 10-man Plymouth at home earlier this season, and we couldn't do the same last season, and that turned out to be a valid concern because although we dominated the ball and the efforts for the remaining 35 minutes, we just never really looked like making that advantage count. Probably our best opportunity was on 63 minutes when Morgan and Maddison ganged up on Neil in midfield to win the ball and set Salah up on the left-hand side of the box, who cut in and wrapped a shot just wide of the right-hand post. I was absolutely convinced this one was going in, and while I need to see way more effort from the Slovenian in providing runs in behind and causing centre-backs problems, it gives me a tiny bit of optimism that there might still be a striker in him yet. The lack of movement up top was one of the reasons we were never going to get a goal in this match though. We worked the ball really well around the box, retaining it for 20 or 30 passes at one point, but we just couldn't find that incisive ball to break in. And that's not for a lack of trying, with Kieran Morgan seeing some lovely gaps in behind, only to find none of Chair, Smith or Salah run in onto them. Morgan on the whole I thought was brilliant in this game. Having said I thought his goal against Coventry was ironic given I thought he didn't stand out for much other than his high work rate, I was totally convinced from this performance that we've got a gem on our hands. He made a couple of mistakes, losing the ball once or twice, but even when he did, he worked quickly to win the ball back and rectify it. I really hope we see him continue to start because he has considerably improved that midfield. A player I was quite disappointed with in this game though was Elias Chair. I've always been a big defender of how much he holds onto the ball given how many goals he has scored for us in the past 2 seasons, but in this half his insistence on hugging the touchline and trying to stand up 2 markers at once was breaking our momentum. The ball really just needed to be played into the box as quickly as possible, and one of the few times he did so resulted in a leaping header from Jimmy Dunn. He really just wanted to cut in and wrap a shot off himself, but Sunderland had his number on that one, and I just wanted to see him get tighter to the rest of the team and link up more quickly. My issue with Chair wasn't just his poor decision making though, but how poor his attitude appeared on the pitch. The less he managed to beat a player or get a shot off, the more he shrugged his shoulders, threw his hands about and started shouting at other players. It looked like he went into a total strop, which you might argue was frustration at himself not being able to hit the levels he's used to, but it was a real negative for me in a mostly bright team performance. To be honest, I thought he needed subbing, but Marty strangely left him on the pitch for the whole match. But instead, Koki Saito replaced Paul Smith on 66 minutes, producing some nice flashes of technique against his markers, but ultimately not being the key to breaking down this Sunderland defence. Lucas Anderson replaced Maddison on 81 minutes, and he was similarly unable to help us find a goal. Because we couldn't break into the box, we went for a few long-range efforts, most of which sailed miles over the bar except for Morgan's, which bounced into the pitch and wide of the left-hand post following a corner. Our shooting outside the box has been terrible at home all season, and if we could have got a few of these on target, we might have been able to profit from saves or loose balls. So that's definitely an area that this whole team needs to sharpen up on. Ultimately, it's probably a testament to how improved this performance really was that we're disappointed not to have scored or won against top of the league Sunderland. But the reality for me here as a team is that we just don't look capable of scoring goals. Even though the performances have been improved, that's now just 1 in the past 3 games. And that's going to be a big problem this season, even with displays as good as this. It goes back to the fact that going into this season with just 2 senior strikers is completely negligent decision making from the club. And with Frey out, I'm genuinely starting to wonder whether the club might need to look to the free market for an option, even if it's for a few months, because if we had a semi-decent centre-forward, I think we would have won this one. I'd like to have even seen Lloyd or Colley for 10 minutes, the latter now back in the first team squad for the first time since our opening match of the season against West Brom. But even then, we're not going to be able to rely on them for the goals that we so desperately need. Still, I'm very reassured by that performance, and you have to think if we can keep those levels up, a win must be coming at some point. Second clean sheet in a row, vastly improved in the middle, and 2 points in a week from first and second. Find some goals from somewhere and we could be onto something. That's all from me. If you've enjoyed the video, then don't forget to hit like and subscribe, and do let me know what you thought about this match in the comments below. I'll see you again tomorrow for my Borough match preview. Cheers.